Hello everyone, bachphotography here, back with another video and another photo shoot idea for you to do in your home while we're all in lockdown together. For this photo shoot, all you're going to need is your camera, a model, and then a television. And any size television will do. Anything from a laptop screen to a TV will work just fine. We're also going to be using our phone as a reflector, but you can use a prism or any material that is going to be reflective, like a shiny surface or a mirror. So I'm here with my roommate Jess, and we have a really big television here which is owned by my other roommate, but you don't have to have a big 80-inch television like this to do this photo shoot. You can use a laptop screen, you could even use a monitor for a computer, any screen really, the bigger the better, but as long as it is more than about 15 inches you can get some beautiful portraits using this technique. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to Pixabay, which is a Creative Commons image repository where you can find a whole bunch of free to use images. And we're going to be adding this to our television so that we can have an interesting background with lots of colorful neon lights for our backdrop in this photo. It's also going to be used to illuminate our subject's face as well. And this is particularly important when shooting at nighttime because there's not going to be very much available light for your photos. So let's talk about equipment that I use on this photo shoot and what equipment you could use to get a similar result. I shot on a Sony a7R II, which is a full frame mirrorless camera, and I'm using a Sigma 35mm f1.4 art lens. Now you could use any DSLR or mirrorless camera, but try to have a lens which is somewhat wide angle so that you can get the reflections from your phone or your reflective surface nice and close to the lens and make it easier for yourself to get those reflections in the shot. If you use a lens that's too long, you're going to have a real hard time getting the reflections to look good in the image because you're going to require a very precise positioning of your reflector to add those reflections into your scene. So shooting at a wide angle lens is recommended for these photos. So before I break down one of these photos in particular, I just want to stress that this was a really difficult photo shoot to do. So if you're trying to get some photos with this method and you're not having much success, don't worry too much. It's going to take a little bit of practice and you're going to shoot a lot of photos with this technique and make a lot of mistakes before you get a really nice photo. And you'll see why when I look through the settings of one of these photos in a minute. So here is one of the photos we shot using this method, and it was shot on a 35mm f1.4. It was shot at the widest aperture of f1.4 at a really slow shutter speed of 1/60th of a second and a ISO of 500. So why did we choose those settings? Well, because we were in such a dark room and we only had the light from the TV, we shot at the lowest aperture possible so we could get as much light into our sensor as possible. We shot at a really slow shutter speed of 1/60th of a second, again so we could get as much light into our camera as possible. And then we shot at a ISO of 500 because I couldn't shoot any wider open and I couldn't shoot any slower than that without getting a blurry image. So I had to boost my ISO up to 500 to get a nice exposure in the image. And you might be wondering, why didn't I shoot at ISO 2000 or 3200 so that I could increase my shutter speed and have more photos that weren't blurry from motion blur? And the reason for that is because in this photo there is going to be a lot of shadows, and even at low ISOs you're going to get quite a bit of noise in the shadowy areas of an image. So I can't afford to shoot at higher ISOs because I would see a lot of grain and noise in my photos. So one last tip for you with this photo shoot is try a few different backdrops on your TV and see what works the best. I found that the brightest images work the best because you're really relying on the light from the TV to get a nice exposure. So if you choose a really dark image, it's going to be much harder to get a nice clean image without any noise. So make sure to choose images that are really bright, really colorful, and have plenty of light coming from the television. So a few things before we jump into Photoshop and have a look at how you would edit some of these photos. I'm going to be leaving all of the raw files in the description if you would like to edit them by yourself in your spare time or send them to me on Instagram. I really like seeing how you guys edit these photos yourself, so thank you very much for sending those to me. I'm going to be leaving a link also to all the equipment I used in this photo shoot if you'd like any more information on any of that stuff. And also, if you're enjoying the content so far, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me with the YouTube algorithm and making this into a full-time job so I can make as much content for you guys as possible. So thank you very much for subscribing. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop in Camera Raw, and the first thing I'm going to do is just add some clarity to the entire image. And I'm going to mess around with the colors, we're going to mess around with the contrast and the shadows and all those sorts of things first, and then we're going to jump into the main side of Photoshop and do little changes as well. So we're just going to boost up the shadows and then drop the blacks a little bit, so we're adding some really deep shadows in there, but removing any of the lighter shadows. Also going to mess around with the color balance a little bit as well, and then we're going to get a tool just to brush in a little bit of the contrast that we lost in the hair because we were shooting with Jess right up to the TV, so some of that really bright harsh light has made her lose a bit of contrast in her hair, so we're just using the brush tool here to add that back in. So resetting our brush tool there, and then we're just going to drop the shadows a little bit and add a bit more shadow and contrast into the eyebrows. And we're just going to do both eyebrows here, the left one and the right one. And these are all going to be really subtle changes, just little things that make the image pop and make Jess pop from the subject, from the background as well. Okay, so you can already see that this image is super bright, but we're going to make it even more colorful a little bit later on. But now what we're going to do is just make the eyes pop a little bit from the image as well. So just adding a little bit more clarity and a little bit more bright exposure in there as well. So we're just resetting our brush tool again, and now what we're going to do is a quick pass for skin smoothing on Jess's skin. So this is just a rough way that you can smooth skin. I'm just masking the areas that I would like to smooth by dropping the exposure and blacks all the way down to -100, and this is just so I can see exactly where I am clicking on the image, and I'm just clicking all of the areas of the skin that I'd like to make smooth. And this is a really rough tool, it's a rough way of doing it, but if you're looking to smooth skin in 30 to 45 seconds instead of using frequency separation, which can take hours if you're really doing it properly, this is a really good alternative to frequency separation. So once we've highlighted all the areas that we would like to make smooth, making sure not to go over any hard lines that we'd like to keep hard, we're going to remove those blacks and exposure changes and then just reduce the clarity to an area that we think looks natural and not too porcelain, but still remove some of those imperfections that we could see in the skin. So now we're going to go into the color adjustment sliders and just add some color on all of the channels that we would like to increase the color on. I think this is a much better way than adding saturation or vibrance to the entire image because you have a lot more flexibility in what colors you would like. Now we're going to avoid changing the orange slider because Jess's skin is mainly an orange color. So if we increased the orange too much, it would start looking a bit strange. So we've changed all the colors apart from the orange. So now we're just going to add a bit more clarity into the eye, into the glasses, and that's pretty much just going to make them look more bold and make the reflections look more bold as well. Okay, so now we're in native Photoshop, and the next thing we're going to do is some skin smoothing with the patch tool, and we're going to just circle an area that we don't like and then drag out into an area that is not textured in a displeasing way, and that's just going to be a way to remove any blemishes. So this is going to take a little bit of time, so I'm just going to fast forward this part, and I'll see you in the next part of the video in a moment. Okay, so that is everything for the patch tool. Now we're going to use the liquefy tool just to pull out Jess's hair a little bit and make her hair look a little bit thicker and more full. And again, these are really subtle changes. You don't want to use this tool too aggressively and make the hair look unnatural or any of the area unnatural, but just adding a little bit more volume to hair really does add a lot to a portrait. And make sure to use a brush that is big enough so that when you are distorting the hair, you're not pinching the hair in a way that looks unnatural. You have to use a big enough brush that it moves a big chunk of hair all at once, so you still have that natural flow of the hair. So before and after, and you can see that that makes a really big difference to the portrait. Okay, so next we're just going to make a selection of Jess here, and because we were shooting right next to the TV, the television isn't very blurry, so we're just going to add a little bit of artificial blur into the image, and not very much, just a little bit. So we're just going to inverse that selection by going to select inverse. Now we have a selection of everything that isn't Jess, and then we go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and we're just adding a pixel at a time, a bit of blur into the image. And you can see that we were moving the selection around so that we didn't get a hard line where the blur starts and ends. So that's everything for this image, and I really hope you like it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you edited these photos as well over on Instagram. I've got something really exciting coming up in the next few weeks, and it is a course on how you can become a photographer from beginning to end, and it's something I've been working on for about the last 9 months, and I'm really excited to release it in the next few weeks. So make sure to go into the description and check out the raw files and sign up to the newsletter so I can let you know when it's finally finished, because I'm really excited to release it. I've put a lot of work into it, and I think it's going to be really helpful to anyone who's looking to learn how to become a professional photographer or how to take their photography to the next level. We go all the way from absolute beginner on on camera equipment, the basics of how cameras work, how you can set up your settings in different lighting environments. We go all the way through to advanced techniques in Photoshop and how to set up your photo shoots for yourself. So that is everything for this video. Thank you very much for watching it to the end. Please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.